we arrive at the grand piano, one of the most splendid music instruments, and a marvellous piece of engineering. And I want to start by talking a bit about the grand piano. And here we have an actual piece of the mechanism of a grand piano. The key is here, and you can see that when I press the key, all sorts of interesting things happen. Probably the most obvious thing first is that the damper is lifted from the string so that it can sound freely. And then immediately I let the key go, the damper falls back. And so that stops the sound. Unless, of course, we have the so-called loud or sustaining pedal on, in which case all the dampers are left. The second thing that happens, well, not in particular sequence, but the second thing that I want to talk about is this little thing here, which you probably noticed catches the key when I hold catches the hammer when I hold the key down. And if we didn't have that, we might get a bounce, 2 or 3 notes instead of 1. So that is a very important piece of the mechanism. So all the rest of this, which are all kinds of fine adjustments that the tuner and manufacturer and so on have to get right, it's all concerned mainly with enabling the key to repeat notes. If we're playing a very rapid thing like this, it's pretty difficult to set up a mechanism that will do that, and at the same time play only one note when you want it. And this is an absolute miracle, I think, of engineering, especially when you think it's available. Well, now, if I just go over to this piano, this of course is an upright piano, but the principle is exactly the same. Instead of the strings being horizontal, they're vertical, and the hammers, of course, instead of being thrown upwards, they're thrown that way at the strings. And if I just play one note, it dies away very quickly. If I hold it down, the damper stays off, and we can keep that note going as long as we like. If I press the sustaining button, then keep on the chord going until I take my foot off the pedal. Do that again. So those are very important features of the instrument. In a grand piano, there are usually, the top end at any rate, there are 3 strings instead of 2, and instead of 1, I mean. And when you press the soft setting, so called, what happens is the whole mechanism moves over a little bit, so that instead of the hammer hitting all 3 strings, it only hits 2 of them, so it's 5. Well now, in the, I suppose about 60 or 70 years ago, in the 20s and 30s, that sort of time, there were lots of arguments between the physicists today and the musicians. And looking back on it now, it seems quite surprising. What the physicist said was that if you think about piano action, the key is really just throwing the hammer at the key, and at the moment that the hammer strikes the string, the key is not in contact with it. So the only thing you can vary is the speed, the velocity at which the hammer hits the string. And that, of course, is quite correct. The physicist then went on to argue that you could vary the velocity simply by dropping a brick on the key from various heights. And they argued that that was really all a pianist could do. Well, of course, the pianists of the day got very angry and said there's a lot more to piano touch than dropping bricks on the key. And of course, they were absolutely right too. So both sides were right. And as is very often the case in these situations, they're not really arguing about the same thing. What the physicists were saying is if we take this into the lab, we can vary the speed at which the hammer hits the string by dropping bricks on it. Perfectly correct, no problem at all. But as soon as you take that out of the lab into the concert hall, the whole situation is different. And there are all sorts of things that a pianist can do somebody dropping bricks certainly couldn't do. Well, that's just one of the things. All the timings and so on and so forth are all a little bit different. And so when we talk about piano touch, it's a very, very complicated thing that we can only really talk about in the concert hall. Incidentally, that's true of many other instruments as well. And some years ago, a student of mine, Mike Rafferty, who happened to be a very good violinist, helped me with an experiment. This is the oscillograph trace of a violin note which we did in the lab. He just played one note. And then we took him into a concert hall with an audience, and he played a piece, I think it was about partita, but it contained exactly the same note that he played in the lab, and this was the trace we got. Now you can probably see that what was happening here is that the note before, because this was in a sequence, the note before was dying away, and then the next note is coming up. So there are at least 2 things happening. One is that when you play a note in a concert hall, it's not on its own, and the first note has to die away before the next